Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Triple G, coming at you once again after Winter NAMM 2019.
Hey guys, this is Gus G, and you're watching Guitar Gear Guy. Thank you for tuning in.
Let's start with the good news. The good news is that I did not catch the anthrax this year. But it is probably because of a bad news that I need to share. So the bad news is that this will go down in my memory as one of the toughest weekend of my life, actually. So couple days leading up to the NAMM show, you know, the health of one of my dogs gradually got worse and worse. And it was, you know, I was not able to go to the NAMM show with a really light heart. And luckily the NAMM show is only about 50 miles south of where I live. So, you know, it's not that difficult for me to get to the show and what have you. So anyhow, so Friday I attend the show, and after the show I was checking into my hotel, and my wife called and said, you know, the pup is not doing so well, and that she's taking the dog to the dog emergency center, whatever. We had to keep him there overnight for, you know, observation and whatever. So I was on my way to the hospital, but then she advised that I go back since the doctors won't know what's up. So Saturday I go back to the NAMM show, and I got the call and I left the show midday. Went to the vet. The dog had been transferred back to the vet from the emergency facility. And after a very extensive, you know, consulting, and the dog had been with me for about 5 years and 8 months, and I had to make a decision to put the dog down. So because of that, yeah, you know, it was a really tough weekend. And you know what, normally every year is so much fun, you know, going to a show and taking a look at new stuff coming out, you know, all that. All of that had to take a second seat this weekend, so it was very rough. And I'm really sorry that I'm getting emotional in front of camera. I thought I wouldn't be this way, but you know, it's only been a few days, and it's been really rough. So I'll just give it at that. So that's the bad news. So what had happened was I spent way less hours on the show floor, which meant way less contact with people, and that meant no anthrax this year. But I ended up walking away from this weekend with a tremendously broken heart. So that's that. Okay, so the pup will live in my memory, have a big part of my heart until the day I myself go. So anyhow, so let's go on to the show. All right, so overall, the show floor, last year I felt this way, but this year, even more so, I noticed that the show organizer, they're doing a better job at, you know, grouping and laying out the show floor. So you got your horns and string instruments and such now even more consolidated into their own section. The drum companies are all in one section. Guitar companies are all in one section. So they are getting better and better at compartmentalizing. So the nosebleed wasn't as bad as like 5-6 years ago, where just companies were just laid out almost at random, I want to say. So that was a really welcome change that I saw. And then, the NAMM show, and I told you guys about this before, but the NAMM show is, originally was where manufacturers come out, they show their new gear for the model year. They recruit distributors, they recruit dealers, meet with the dealers, take the orders for the, upcoming year. Hey, I'll take 15 of that model, I'll take 30 of that model. So those meetings take place, and that still happens. But I think the industry now has been shifting slowly to a point where, like Mesa Boogie hasn't shown up to NAMM show in many years, because they don't really need to recruit dealers anymore. And same thing goes for companies like Gibson, where they're not really there to recruit dealers anymore. They would hold meetings with their the big dealers and whatever, and still take the yearly orders and whatever. But the NAMM show has kind of shifted, where you now see not just the legit press members, but you see a lot of social media influencers. So you got, people like Gear Gods, you got people like Arnold, you got Rubea, you got Chapman, you got Van Eller, you got basically all the guys that you would know on YouTube. They're there for their own needs, but they're also most of them have partnered up with a manufacturer through either endorsement deals, signature deals, and what have you. So you have a lot of these guys there. Not some of them are working the booth, some of them are covering the event, things like that. So that has a lot of that now you see on the NAMM floor. Now, with that said, a lot of you wish that you could attend NAMM show, and it is fun. Sometimes I know I sound a little jaded, where after X number of years attending the event, you kind of get used to how things are, and you kind of see how a lot of companies, they just reintroduce everything they've had. I mean, their booth layout is the same, their models are about the same, maybe they're showing you just different color this year. So it's not like you're seeing something a whole lot brand new every year. It's not very glamorous at times, and sometimes people like me, a lot of people, not just me, a lot of people that are at the show working the booth or covering the event or whatever, you have to grab quick lunch, and sometimes it's on top of the trash can, like you see right here on the video. It's not just all fun each day. All right, so last year, one of the big absents from the NAMM show was none other than Gibson. So in 2018, we all know they went through the whole bankruptcy ordeal, continued blasting of the CEO, Henry, whatever his name was. So company was in turmoil. They opted not to attend NAMM for whatever the reason. They had some presence at like a CES and things like that. But if you don't know, company has gone through restructuring. They now have a new CEO who appears to be more dedicated to taking Gibson back to where it came from, the Gibson that we would all want them to be. So Gibson came back with a bang, and they had a huge presence. I mean, hundreds of guitars, a huge room, just lots of staff members. It was great to see Gibson come back to NAMM show, but not just coming back, but with purpose and like a meaningful presence. The room was just buzzing. There were a lot of people in there. The room was really hot, by the way. You go in and just so hot in there. But it's good times. and a lot of nice guitars. And one of the companies they own, subdivision they own on top of Steinberg and Epiphone, is Kramer. So if you are a fan of 80s metal and whatever, Kramer, Berettas, and everything else, it's you're very familiar. So they had the Jersey Star. That reminded me of a Rich Sambora guitar, that Bon Jovi's Rich Sambora, the stuff that he played way back when. So that was on the display. They had a polka dot super strat kind of thing, night swan, is that what it's called? So that was there. Apparently these guitars are made in China, I think I saw somewhere. About $1,000. Chinese built guitars, they keep going up in price. I don't know what that really means. I don't necessarily put off Chinese guitars because of their origin, but you buy Chinese or Indonesian guitars because of the value, and once they go over a certain threshold, I don't know where that value proposition ends. So there you go. So the Gibson was a good sight to see coming back. All right, so in 2019, one of the things that I walked away with a huge impression is the meteoric rise of a company called Ormsby. So Ormsby over the years has been like a somewhat of a boutique-ish builder next to, like Mayones, Blackwater, Skirvesson, who am I forgetting? So some of these like boutique builders. So Perry Ormsby has his guitars either in Australia or New Zealand, something like that. So, they were really nice guitars. And last year, I also acquired a Goliath headless model. Really nice guitar. But Ormsby apparently has assigned Dino of a Fear Factory away from Ibanez, Rusty Cooley away from Dean Guitars. By the way, Dean was not present at this year's NAMM show. They had two Dean skanks walking around with two of their guitars and just like taking photos on the show floor. Anyhow, so those guys have jumped ship, and Ormsby now had a big, much bigger booth than yesteryears. And, they have a full range of guitars. Their guitars are spot on, very nice instruments. And, it speaks volume when you can assign guys like Dino, who has somewhat of an influence over guitar buying market. And a really great guy, and I'm gonna actually now show you a little bit of footage that I captured while Dino was messing around.
I don't know what I'm gonna do for that section. Solo.
Alright, so along with the Ormsby, another company that I feel like they are continuing to rise in the industry is Strandberg. So up until last year, they had the smallest booth on the Hall D. And this year, they had maybe like a 3 times bigger of a booth. No, actually way bigger than 3 times. I take it back. Maybe about 5 times or 6 times bigger in square footage. Huge booth with just a full range of their headless guitars, bass, and some custom stuff, prototypes. There was a Sarah Longfield, the signature model. I mean, they just had a really great presence. And Ola Strandberg, he doesn't know me, but I shook his hand before, and he's a really nice guy. And I'm really glad to see that company continuing to succeed, because in an industry that's so filled with the legacy names, Fenders and Gibsons and even PRS to a point after 30 something years. It's really hard to crack that market and gain your own space. And I see Strandberg continuing to move forward, and that's really great for us as guitar enthusiasts having options. Where Strandberg becoming ergonomic guitars, headless, and they have the Enduro neck, which is all unique to them. So that's really nice. So another company that really has been impressing me. And it kind of goes back to the NAMM's purpose earlier. So NAMM used to be where companies show up, sign up the dealers, and that kind of stuff, which I said earlier. So when Kiesel shows up, where Kiesel and what used to be Carvin, they go straight to consumer. They don't have dealership. So it was always a little odd to see Carvin and Kiesel at the NAMM show because they're not there to recruit the dealers and take orders. However, Kiesel, again, had a very good presence with all their models. And, they're signing some big names as well. They got, Andy James. Andy James and Cole Rowland. And, they're grabbing some names. They're being innovative to a reasonable degree. They have a new model that they introduced this year, which is just a Strat, which you can't knock them for. PRS did the same thing with the John Mayer guitar, something Sky, I forget. Anyhow, so Kiesel had a really big presence, which, I bought myself a Kiesel last year. It's a really great builder, in my opinion. And I think Jeff Kiesel is really devoted himself to really doing a good thing for the industry. And I really see that company being a great company. Speaking of a great company, Ibanez has been, to me, Ibanez has really been like raising up their games, bringing up their game to a whole another level, maybe beginning of 2017. Then they really solidified in 2018. I mean, I walked away from 2018 NAMM going, God dang, these guys are just on point. Their game's really strong. And 2019 kind of continue. I don't think the impact was as good this year compared to 2018. However, I think they really solidified their offering, their lineup. Really great guitars. They have stables, right? They have the Gem, a Vice signature. They got Paul Gilbert model. They have Nita Strauss, which was a big success for them last year. And they signed a bunch of new up-and-coming, guitar guys' signature models, which all really add value to their lineup. And, they're still offering somewhat good value for the price in terms of their lineup. And Ibanez just continues to impress me. And this year, on top of Iron Label guitars, which was dedicated line of metal centric guitars, this year they introduced the Axion label. So we'll see how that all goes. Really, really good guitars, I think they're making. And, as I said earlier, a bunch of notable absence. Like this year, one of the things that I definitely noticed was the absence of Dean guitars. So obviously, I think the company is definitely doing not as good, or maybe they just got smart and they're not there to recruit dealers and spending money and expenses overhead on having a presence at a trade show such as this. If they're not seeing value for if they're not seeing return for their investment, it doesn't make sense as a business to be present at the NAMM show just for the sake of being present. So who knows what's really going on. So that's that. Dean always was right next to the Diamond amplifications, and Diamond also now has guitars, which I think they kind of took over the whole Zelinsky lineup or whatever it was, I forget. So DBZ guitars, yeah, that's what they took over, and they labeled it Diamond. They had a way smaller presence, so that was a little weird. Again, some of these smaller guys, it's just getting tougher and tougher because us guitar buyers, how all of you, a lot of you, it's either Fender or Gibson or go home, and that kind of thing. So it's very tough to crack that market. Okay, so ESP, as always, every year they had a very big presence on the second floor. You know, they always display their the Japanese custom models, big full wall. Usually, by the time I show up, they're all sold. By the way, to and these are expensive ones, and they're also to the dealers. And E2s, they got some LTDs, and this year what was new was apparently they took over the distribution of Angle amplifiers away from Velvet distribution. So that was kind of a big deal. So they had Angle amps in their booth, which is kind of cool. All right, so not as a company, but in terms of a product being offered, you know, I have a Helix. I also have a Head Rush right here for my office. And, you know, last year, I'm sure you've heard the name Moore. You know, so these processors, you know, Kempers and Axelfax, you know, these are now kind of starting to saturate the market a little bit, right? So because you now have more than one or two options. Now who jumped into the array of this market is Hot Tone, which were like a import cost-effective pedal brand. You know, they now came up with their own guitar processor. Zoom always had one, G3, G5, something like that. But now you also have entry from Moore. Last year they had GE200. This year they introduced the GE300, which is a bigger and you know, it has its own features that go, you know, head to head against already established names like Helix. So that's, you know, not everybody can have a tube amplifier, and some of us, you know, prefer having the versatility of, you know, these processors that get you close to a tone that you want to get to. You know, nobody's saying these are genuine, dead on, you know, copy of the tone of a certain particular amplifier or guitar pedal. To me, as I always say, if it gets you into the same zip code, it doesn't have to get you to the same address, but if you're in the same zip code, it's close enough. So, you know, it's good to see these competitions, because now Line 6 will have to work harder to improve their Helix, and Kemper guys will have to work harder to make their Kemper worthwhile for $2,000 whatever dollars that they charge. You know, stuff like this. So competitions are great, and us as consumers eventually will take advantage of this type of development. Seymour Duncan is also another company that I kind of marvel at on these NAMM shows. Like I said earlier, a lot of companies bring out the same booth design, same, you know, everything, but like a Duncan, every year it's a little bit different. This year they brought out this like a train. Was it a bus? I forget, but you know, they had a very cool design. I was passing by when Mark from Periphery was doing interview in one of the rooms in there for the pedal, signature pedal that he came out with. But you know, Duncan always has a really good presence, and I think Ola did a product demo there with just a bunch of people. So Duncan, oh, good times there as well. And you know, something I went over before in one of my other chat videos, but you know, guitar industry, we seem to go through this phase. So we had this phase for a while where active pickups, and it had to be EMGs or go home. But you know, people got tired of the EMGs because of a somewhat sterile, less organic tone. And for a while there was this phase where everybody was gushing over bare knuckles. And you know, still bare knuckle. A lot of Ibanez now has some bare knuckles out of the factory, I noticed. So you know, bare knuckle was the hot thing for a while, and it's been now about 3-4 years or so where Fishman is now the hot thing. And right now, Fishman equipped guitars are all the rage, and you know, they seem to be increasing their market share, which is you know, which is awesome, again, because we want to have that choice. The competitions make, you know, value, and we take advantage of that, so that's all good. All right, so that's that's kind of what I walked away from the NAMM show this year. Like I mentioned previously, you know, it was somewhat of a limited time spent at the NAMM show this year. I tried to do the best I can walking around, getting, you know, kind of soaking it all in. So hopefully next NAMM show, trust me, NAMM show will come sooner than later. And, you know, every year I do New Year's resolution and I go, you know, I'm going to buy less and really spend more time improving upon my craft as a guitar player. Every year I say this, but once the NAMM show happens in January, you go and, you know, all of that just goes out the door after all these new candies, eye candies. Then you go, oh, I want that, I want this. And, you know, sometimes they go out the window. But I'm not sure if I walked away this year with a guitar going, oh, I really want that. I don't remember. I can't tell you if I did that. Like last year, the Charvel Satchel guitar, I walked away from the show saying, I really need that. I don't know if I saw anything like that this year, including EVH, Shark, and all the new stuff. Even Phil Demo, who I love dearly, he has now an Explorer shaped guitar out of Jackson, which I don't know if I necessarily like. Speaking of Explorer, the Jeff Loomis is now with Jackson, and his US custom shop Explorer was present, and which is really nice, which I showed on my Instagram the day I saw it. If you are not following my Instagram, what are you doing? It's Instagram/Guitar Gear Guy GGG. Go follow immediately. And what else, you guys? I think that's about it for this year's NAMM show. So until next chat video, you guys have been awesome to sit through, especially the little emotional part that I had to go through. God, that was horrible. So thank you for your time watching, and you guys have been great. I've been Triple G. Until next time, you guys take care. Be good humans.